I'm not bringing the bias here. You are.
What'd they do up there? Brainwashing?
Hey, it's not my fault that your team is terrible.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This is just honest. I'm sorry if it hurts. Oh wait, I'm not really sorry.
Put that coffee down.
This is a special edition of the CJ Sweat Show. This is an interview-only edition. Thank you to those who listened to our podcast last night. Today, I am joined by Chip Rouse. He is a contributor to StormandandNorman.com. This is a fan-sided website that is dedicated to all things concerning University of Oklahoma, or Oklahoma University, I should say. And of course, he is on to discuss the situation with Bob Stoops retiring. So, Chip, thank you for joining us on this beautiful Thursday evening.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's just get right out of the gate. Bob Stoops retires yesterday. What was your reaction to this?
Well, like many people, I think it wasn't as shocking a story as it was surprising by the timing. It had been rumored for some time that Bob Stoops may be reaching a point in his career where he might want to step down. But he had indicated a year or so ago that he was very happy doing what he's doing and wanted to, continue doing so for coaching, that is, for another 10 years perhaps. It just so happens that the timing was such, not so much that he had to be forced to make the announcement, and he has made it very clear that it has nothing to do with health concerns, which, of course, many people consider to be the reason behind it, just because of the immediacy of the timing. But he has said that he's in fine health, and that wouldn't prevent him from coaching. But he's leaving a tremendously successful program at a very high time in the history of Oklahoma football. They have brand new facilities. He's just coming off an 11-win season. He's had 14 or so of those in the last 18 seasons, and that's unprecedented among the current coaches in Power 5 conferences. And to get back to the original question, 18 years is a long time to be at the same institution. So it's not surprising that he'd be looking for a change of environment. He's handing it off to a gentleman who's considered to be an outstanding offensive mind in Lincoln Riley. He's a very young coach, but Bob Stoops was in his 30s when he took the job back in 1999 at Oklahoma. So to circle back to the original question, CJ, I think the announcement was not as shocking as it was surprising from the timing aspect.
Yeah, the timing definitely threw me off. I mean, I get a notification from Twitter. It's around 3:30 yesterday, and it just, that timing, 3:30 on a Wednesday, just doesn't seem typical. And for the decision for him to retire, for that to be effective immediately, kind of seemed a little off to me. So let me ask you this. I mean, I love Bob Stoops, but was this his decision, or was there somebody in Oklahoma that said, listen, we need to make this decision now and go ahead and move on?
No, I think it was totally his decision. I have no idea what discussions went on prior to this, but I would imagine there's been some discussion up to this point in time. The timing may have been pushed back a little bit because of the softball championship and some other things that were going on at Oklahoma. It is interesting from a personal standpoint that he would wait until after spring practice to make that announcement. But he's certainly going out on the top of his game, and very, very few coaches get that chance.
Well, to your point, I will say this, and I was texting one of my friends the other day, and it kind of hit me. Nobody does sports like the University of Oklahoma does. And by that I mean Oklahoma invests money, time, effort, energy, resources into every single sport. And most schools are at least focused on one or two specific sports, and Oklahoma's focused on all of them. So to your point, I could totally see them telling Bob, let's wait until softball's complete because we don't want to take away what the girls are doing because their story, back-to-back championships, is fantastic. With that said, though, you don't think this could in any way be related to Joe Mixon or possibly another OU situation, Baker Mayfield? I know D.D. Westbrook has had his issues. This has nothing to do with that.
No, if anything, I think it has nothing to do with the university asking Coach Stoops to step down. If anything, it might be that Bob Stoops is tired of all the ridicule and all the complaints when he's made it very clear he's a big believer in second chances. And all of those players have performed admirably after their initial problems. So, this is not a Baylor situation, and I don't think it has anything to do with the university pushing Bob out. I think it has to do maybe a little bit with after 18 seasons, you get a little tired of this stuff.
That's a fair point, and I will say this: Oklahoma is one of these schools where the fans are like most other SEC schools. That's what I would compare the passion of football. Oklahoma fans are very passionate, similar to how LSU and Alabama fans are, and that, as great as it can also be a little bit draining on a coach. So let me ask you this. So Urban Meyer, a few years ago, he's completely drained from the Florida atmosphere, decides to take 2 years off, goes and spends time at ESPN, is able to spend more time with family, and then the job at Ohio State opens, and he jumps on it. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation that Bob Stoops may take the Notre Dame job should that open in the next 12 to 24 months. Do you think he could possibly take that job, or do you think we have seen the last of Bob Stoops on the sideline?
That is a very interesting question, CJ. Personally, my belief is that you may have seen the last of Bob Stoops on a college sideline. However, I think that he still would like to coach. Who knows what will happen after a year or whatever, how many ever months of being on sabbatical or what they call in some sports gardening leave or something like that. Notre Dame job has been open before, and Stoops pulled his name out of that consideration. He is an Ohio guy, right next door to the state of Indiana. That is a high-profile job, but to be very honest with you, there are very few jobs, including Notre Dame, that are as prestigious as the University of Oklahoma. So I'm not sure he's aspiring for another college job just to see if he could do it again. It wouldn't be out of the question that he might turn to an NFL opportunity. That is something he has not done in his life.
That's a theory I have not heard before, but I gotta tell you, I look at a lot of these NFL gigs. The Colts could certainly use them. The Panthers, if they have another bad season, could certainly use somebody like Bob Stoops. That's a theory I have not heard. You wrote a story on your website, stormandnorman.com, called Bob Stoops Did It His Way, going out as a winner. What is going to be the legacy of Bob Stoops when you match him up against some of the other great coaches like Bud Wilkinson? Where does Bob Stoops fit in as far as Oklahoma football history is concerned?
Well, he's clearly the winningest head coach. He's coached the longest. Of their 21 head coaches in history, he has the longest tenure at 18 years. I'm not exactly sure of this, but I think that Wilkinson had 17 and Barry Switzer, who left under different circumstances, had 16. So he's the longest tenured Oklahoma head coach. He is the winningest Oklahoma head coach. In his 18 seasons, he never failed to take the team to a postseason game. He's been to 4 national championship games. I could go on and on about the legacy, but he is clearly a huge face in the history of Oklahoma football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, people don't realize it right now, but this is right now you look at college football, I would say Bob Stoops is kind of on that Mount Rushmore as a top 5 coach. Now his replacement, Lincoln Riley, 33 years old, has never been a head coach before. He's been a coordinator for only the past couple of years. They have been saying we've been grooming him. I think some of that statement is to try and get in front of the potential questioning from boosters. But you look at Lincoln Riley. What do you see in him? Is this the right fit for Oklahoma?
Well, that's still to be determined, but at least on paper and given what we've seen the last couple of years and in his short career, he was at Texas Tech for a number of seasons, you might recall, went to East Carolina. Even at that university, at East Carolina, he had a top 5 ranked offense, and he's clearly replicated that at Oklahoma. I think he has the tools and the skills and a personality to succeed at Oklahoma. Bob Stoops was never a head coach before he was given that head job, and I think that has something to do with the confidence they have in Lincoln Riley. Interestingly, Steve Spurrier, who was a mentor of Bob Stoops, is a mentor of Bob Stoops, and of course for whom Bob coached as a defensive coordinator at Florida, said that Lincoln Riley is walking into a gold mine. He's got the greatest opportunity of any young head coach, maybe forever. What he does with that is still a matter of conjecture, but he has the talent, they have the facilities, he has the incoming recruiting class. They're pretty set at quarterback for the next couple of years. I think he's certainly got an excellent launching pad to have success there, and he'll have a great deal of support from the university and the fan base.
Now, listen, I look at Lincoln Riley, and I don't see anything not to like. He hasn't done anything for me yet that makes me really like him, but that's because I don't know too much about him, like much of my audience and like much of the country. He's kind of you know the name, but you don't really know everything behind the name. So I ask this. Why not open up the search and possibly at least consider, a Chip Kelly or just somebody with a bigger name, a Justin Fuente who's already established himself as a head coach?
Well, there's been some speculation that although Riley's been named the head coach, that a national search could be in the works. But I think that's purely speculation. The University of Oklahoma doesn't generally make announcements of this kind and then undercut the individual with a national search. Yes, they could go on a national search. In fact, the curiosity of that is this probably puts more nervousness in the major programs around the country, short of maybe Nick Saban or maybe Urban Meyer, of people
like
who
Texas
might be considered for that job. Somebody like what?
Somebody like Texas with a new coach, Tom Herman, comes in, and now you're kind of thrown this wild card or this curveball in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you bring up a good point about Texas. This is the first time in 70 years that the Red River rivalry has had 2 new coaches on both sidelines.
Wow. Wow, I had no idea. I mean, these are people don't realize this because Texas, for whatever reason, gets all of the branding out of the Big 12. Oklahoma has been stuffed for about the past 10 years, although they've been more successful. But, I mean, historically, both Oklahoma and Texas are just as good as each other. Let me ask you this. So, Lincoln Riley, he's 33 years old, hasn't been a head coach before. There's been this new trend, and I know Bob Stoops was young when he came into Oklahoma, but we've seen now Lane Kiffin was hired. He's had 2 big head coaching jobs in his youth and has somehow worked his way down to Florida Atlantic, but he was hired at a young age. Tom Herman's hired at a young age. PJ Flex at Minnesota, he's young. There's been this trend of younger coaches, early mid-30s, getting big-time programs. I mean, Oklahoma's a big program, Chip. You know this. What do you think of this trend? What is leading to this trend of going with the younger guy versus bringing in a seasoned veteran who maybe has a little bit more experience?
I don't know if I have given that much thought, but that is a very interesting point. And I think that the historical trend is programs like Oklahoma is to bring in huge names. Interestingly, Oklahoma has not been a program that has gone nationwide and brought in people from all over the country. Barry Switzer came out of the program. Chuck Fairbanks came from outside. Stoops obviously came from outside, but he wasn't a national name at the time. They've gone with a lot of assistants and former players who have played there and coached, and that hasn't been a really successful at Oklahoma, interestingly. John Blake and Gary Gibbs are the most recent examples of that. In fact, speaking of John Blake, before Bob Stoops took over, John Blake's 3 years at Oklahoma, probably the lowest point since the 1940s at Oklahoma. The Sooners won 12 games in 3 seasons. They won 13 games in the national championship in Bob Stoops' second season with virtually the same players. So, back to your point about whether a national name or an unknown is the best way to go. I think Joe Castiglione, the athletic director, has had a pretty good record going both ways. In basketball, he brought in Lon Kruger, who was a well-established name. In football, he brought in Bob Stoops, or came in about the same time. So he's kind of gone both ways. I think Oklahoma is willing to roll the dice either way, depending on what they think is best for the program.
Yeah. His name is Chip Rouse. He is a contributor to StorminInNorman.com. It is, again, a branch of the Fan-Sided College Division Network. He does a very good job. Go read his writing. It's StorminInNorman.com. Chip, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.